And I would like to turn it over to Melissa, who's going to introduce our speaker, Michelle from Cone Health.
Thanks so much, Melanie. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Melissa Reif-Geyer, and I am the Executive Director of Culture for Cone Health. And I've been a part of this group too, so it's nice to see so many of you again. Melanie reached out about this. I had, I guess, tickled her in a chat, and sometimes you forget what you put in those darn chat windows. And she had asked for a volunteer, and I was like, oh yeah, we'll do that. And she reached out, and I was like, oh. And so I reached out to my expert colleague, Michelle Boston, who I'd like to introduce. So Michelle is in our organizational effectiveness department. She is a consultant. And she, I think, is a little bit modest because she describes herself as managing our internal professional coaching program, but really she redesigned this program and took it to the next level. So I'm excited for her to present to you today and share our philosophy and what we're doing around professional coaching here at Cone Health. So with that, Michelle, I'd invite you to say any other comments by way of introduction of yourself, but I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm having a little bit of trouble with my bandwidth, so I'm actually going to drop my video, and then hopefully I won't cut out while I'm speaking. If I can figure out how to do that. There we go. So let me go ahead and share my screen. Oops, can you see it?
Not yet.
Okay, I must have done the wrong thing. Sorry about that. Slight delay here.
No problem.
Of course, I had it set up ahead of time and it worked just fine.
Michelle, worst case scenario, if you can't pull it up, feel free to send me a copy and I can pull it up on my end.
Okay. Okay, I think this will work. Thanks for your patience. Sorry about that. All right, so I'm excited to talk with all of you about internal coaching programs. And let's see here. I'm going to spend a little bit of time overviewing our program and talk about how we got to where we are now, as well as some data points and success measures. Then take a few questions, and then we'll talk about the future of the possibility for internal coaching. So our program is really built on a very strong mission where we have embedded coaching into our culture so that it stands out as a signature feature of our commitment to personal growth and development, where we really are cultivating organizational success, one relationship at a time. So as we get started, I just want to differentiate between coaching, counseling, and mentoring. So counseling is really about solving problems. Mentoring is for answering questions. Most of us probably have all these resources within our systems, but coaching is that distinct resource which is utilized for overcoming barriers and achieving goals. A coach is a thought partner who listens deeply and provides a reflection for you to see the way to reach your goals. So the philosophy our coaching program is built on is that all individuals are creative, resourceful, and whole. Coaching doesn't tell you the answer. It provides someone to walk next to you while you discover your own answers. So a few highlights, the benefits of internal coaching programs. I'm not going to read everything on the slide, but I do want to point out that middle bar that says fulfillment of a sense of purpose for coaches and coachees. And the story I want to share is I was out to lunch with a physician the other day, and she's one of our coaches in addition to her physician role. And she was talking a bit about feeling kind of burned out, as many of our physicians are these days. And she said the one thing she was not going to give up was coaching, because that's a place she finds renewal. When she participates in coaching, it's so connected to her sense of purpose and reaching and teaching others, that's what keeps her going on. So remembering that coaching isn't just making a difference for the coachees, but for the actual coaches in our organizations as well. The other thing I want to highlight about some of the benefits are the way that coaching really matches up well with our efforts around diversity, equity, and inclusion. So because coaches believe that all individuals are creative, resourceful, and whole, they come from a perspective of not knowing. They're open to discover and foster the same in their coachees, and that's what challenges bias. We know it enhances retention. I'll talk more about how it supports succession planning and complements leader training. Bottom line, internal coaches are easily accessible, cost-effective, free, and know the complexities of your company culture. Here's a quote from one of our coachees. "This opportunity has been incredible. I truly feel like I have been valued for who I am, what I bring to the organization, and how to show up so that I am viewed for all that I have to offer." So our program was initiated in 2010 and truly built on best practice. All of our coaches participate in a 62-hour rigorous training program where they learn to coach, are observed doing their coaching, evaluated, and just continue that practice until they really hone the skill. We follow a particular set of ethics under the International Coach Federation. We currently have 75 professional coaches internal at Cone Health. 3 of those are on our executive leadership team. And soon, we have another cohort coming up this spring, we will have 2 more. We are truly seeing life-changing outcomes. And as I mentioned before, it's a powerful DEI and supports culture work through teaching that humble, curious inquiry, as well as powerful open coaching questions. So the International Coach Federation is the gold standard that supports coaching, and board certified coach is another well-known certifying body. Both of these organizations support the training that our coaches receive. So the core foundations of our coach training, if we were to break it down into 4 topics, it starts with presence, teaching about how to hold a space to promote psychological safety. This is beyond active listening, but really moves into powerful, curious inquiry, how to ask questions so that other folks feel like they can be vulnerable and really take a deep dive into what's going on. And discovery, how to be that thought partner to allow someone else to answer their own questions and discover their path. And then action. Our coaches, as I said, are trained not just in active listening, but in cultivating powerful outcomes. We really believe in accountability and in setting appropriate goals and looking for action out of each coaching session. So here's a few highlights of our professional coaching strategy. We really collaborate in alignment with our larger system. Our Cone brand is to be right here with you. And so everything we do with coaching is to match up with that brand. We're sharing the resource, talking about the return on investment, and connecting with executive leadership frequently around where we are embedded in the organization and the difference that we're making. We have quite a robust selection and certification process for coaches. You can't just raise your hand and ask to participate. You have to participate in an application process. The application is reviewed by several different parties. And then we're thinking about who are we bringing onto our bench of coaches so that we have the right coach for the right coaching situation. We have continuous development opportunities for coaches. As a matter of fact, as a coach, if you don't participate in continuous development, you can't continue to coach. So we make sure that when you participate in coaching, you are truly getting someone who is at the top of their game and operating under best practice. We're very intentional in having a responsive quantity of available professional coaches. And what I mean by that is if you come in and you're really looking for a diverse physician to work with, I want to make sure you have that. So as we have applications coming in, we're looking at them to see what is it that we're really needing so that we have a nice variety of coaches available to our coachees. We have an efficient quality matching and tracking system. That's something new. We have just we will soon, we're just getting everything ready here, but we'll be using a software called Insala to help us with our matching. Up until this point, we've been doing everything by hand, which can be quite a lot with 75 coaches and all of the requests we get. So here's some of the demographics we've been able to track so far. Of our 75 internal coaches, 75% are female. And as you can see, only 21% are diverse. So we'd really like to move that needle. For our coaches that are physicians, we have only 9% that are physicians. And so in selecting our next cohort of coaches, we definitely were looking for diversity for males and for physicians. Since July of 2020, we have received 142 coach requests. We did see a dip in those requests as people were really inundated by COVID, and we've seen an increase just here recently. 70% of those requests come from women. Only 26% come from people of color. And as you can see, 11% come from physicians. And we have absolutely seen a significant increase. In this past week, I've talked to 3 different physicians looking for coaching. So I believe that's related to burnout. And of course, just to now that COVID is starting to ease up, starting to have some more time to think about ourselves and our own development. So who can access coaching? Well, in our system, much like many others, the inquiry can come from leader level and above. Now, the vision that we have for coaching is that this is expanded throughout the organization. So if you think about the difference that you make when you have an aspiring leader that is maybe the CNO and is looking to grow from that level, coaching is really going to make a difference. But let's think about retention and succession planning and start with that nurse tech who has promising abilities and really wants to grow. What if we could provide coaching at that level and really carry them and sustain their career at our organizations? So that's the vision. That's what we're looking to move towards. The other way that folks access coaching is they're identified by their leader for support. So it could be through succession planning, and I'll talk more about that later. And then another avenue would be due to performance or burnout concerns. So a leader might offer coaching as a resource to help you, turn things around. So here's our process. We start with a person coaching that conversation so that we can really discern, is it counseling, mentoring, or coaching that is the best match for them? We have that data-driven match process, really looking at, are they looking for someone who's direct, who has a great sense of humor, who's kind of sensitive? Like what kind of person are they really going to match with in order to get the most out of their coaching experience? Each coachee is provided with at least 2 coaches that they can call. We would like that we ask them to have call and have good fit conversations. These are 15-minute, 20-minute conversations just to make sure that they're selecting the right coach. We have a coaching contract, which establishes the confidentiality practices, as well as some other guidelines set forth by the International Coach Federation. Most coaching sessions last about 6 months, and they have about 8 sessions. Some are a little bit longer, some less, but that's really our guidepost. Coaching, of course, is virtual or in person. So here's a couple of unique features about our program that we've really fostered and improved upon in the last 18 months. We have a variety of continuing education and development opportunities for our coaches. One is a monthly synergy group where we invite our coaches to come together for conversation, to practice coaching, to learn coaching skills, and to hear about new techniques and to talk about things they're struggling with. We also have reciprocal coaching within our own organization. So coaches can pair up with other coaches for 3 to 6 sessions to have a period of coaching and feedback in each session, to be really talking about those coaching skills. And then as a PCC level coach myself, I can provide mentor coaching. So I have several coaches within the organization that we are working to help them obtain their ICF credential. So as I said before, we really work hard to integrate across the organization, and we are embedded into succession planning. We have a program called the Clinical Transformation Cohort, where everyone that participates in that program receives a coach. Our Nurse Leadership Academy, those individuals receive a coach. And then here I've just listed some of our departments: DEI, lean, development, culture. I mean, all things that you have probably in your organizations. Each of these departments is infused with coaching skills training. Each of these departments has members in their departments that are also coaches. So we really have this inculcated throughout our culture. So we're going to talk just a minute about succession planning. So what we do with that is every high potential that is identified is offered a professional coach to support them on their journey. We then identified a specific cohort of our coaches that were really interested in this kind of work, and they had the time for it. And we talked about how to facilitate an individual development plan meeting. They received specific training for that. They also received specific training. Actually, I'm getting ready to do that as soon as I'm finished with this call, in a 360 multi-rater assessment tool. We partnered with an outside consultant to develop our own 360 development tool so we can collect our own data. So then our coaches are partnered with these identified high potentials, participate in the individual development plan meetings. We facilitate leader alignment meetings around the goals that are set, debrief the 360s, as well as the pulse assessment, which is like a miniature 360 on particular development areas, and then continue coaching throughout. So this is the way we've really integrated coaching into our succession planning process to make sure that we are at the top of our game and we're holding on to our folks. So here's a couple of data points we have. 90% of our coachees have said that as a result of their coaching, they've strengthened their desire to continue their career at Cone Health. And the other data point is about, we had 5 key roles I want to highlight that were at risk of leaving Cone Health. So 3 were physicians that had performance concerns and were provided coaching as an opportunity, should they choose to participate in it, to help turn things around. 1 was a high potential employee that really was having some performance concerns and was provided coaching as an opportunity. That's the 4th person. And the 5th was someone who is a strong leader, didn't have any performance concerns, but was really having difficulty. 5 came to coaching. And the reason I highlight them is because all 5 are still with the organization and thriving. The 1 person who came for development opportunities actually found another role, is doing fabulous. And I want to talk about those physicians. So the first thing here you see on the left is a quote from one of our physicians that participated in coaching. He was struggling and was provided the opportunity to participate in coaching. And he says, instead of trying to change who I am, I was shown how I could apply my strengths to overcome my deficits. So you can see just some really compelling words from this provider about the turnaround. The other statistics on the bottom here about the patient experience score, this was a physician who actually had to go before professional standards and was provided coaching as an opportunity, again, to turn things around. The provider was quite invested, really was not happy with where things were in his career altogether. And since coaching, this provider earned a 4.8 patient experience score, which is on a 1 to 5 rating, and the highest score this provider has ever received. So not only is he doing well and feeling good about his practice, he's also receiving powerful outcome scores. So the other graph is just showing you the dollars we can save by keeping our physicians retained. So we know that when we have to separate a physician, sometimes we have to pay severance. We also know frequently in onboarding a physician, we have to pay bonus. We know for sure we spend about $11,000 per physician in recruitment costs. Putting all that money aside, just focusing on the dollars saved, when you look at how long it takes to get from 2 visits per hour to 4 visits per hour. So you figure a new physician just isn't going to pull in as much revenue for the organization. So one physician, you will spend $740,000 waiting for them to get up to speed. That's just in 1 year for one physician. And I think the most powerful point about our team is that we're powered by passion. We have no dedicated FTE. We have 2 staff that use a portion of our time to run our program. All of our coaches are volunteers and take on this additional responsibility because it's their passion. So I want to pause for a minute and take some questions about our program, and then we'll talk about some future possibilities.
Michelle, this is Maura Walden from Hopkins. I have a question. You provide executive coaching for performance. Does that coaching have different guidelines, or is it all similar?
Great question. Yes, it does have different guidelines. The coaching for performance is kind of a best kept secret. It's not something that we widely publicize because we feel very strongly that folks need to come to coaching because they want to, for their own development. If we feel like perhaps we haven't given an individual all the opportunities to succeed and we want to give them another opportunity, we might offer coaching. When they participate in this kind of leader requested coaching, and then they participate in a goal alignment meeting. So the coach, the leader, and the coachee is involved in a conversation about the goals. All the coaching remains completely confidential. We just have 1 or 2, sometimes 3 meetings along the way between the leader, the coach, and the coachee. That's the only difference. And then once they complete that time, so one of these physicians that I gave the quote about, when he finished and the leader said, yeah, I'm good, you've met my goals, we don't need to meet anymore. That provider said, I still want to go to coaching. And so he continued coaching, and that was just kept separate.
Michelle, this is Melissa, and there's I'm monitoring the chat for you. There's a couple of questions. So Janine Phillips has asked, what is involved in the pulse assessments?
Great question. So what they do is they take if you're familiar with a 360 multi-rater assessment, let's say it's got 6 leadership competencies in it. So you take that assessment and you walk away, and maybe the thing that really stands out for you is that you need to work on communication skills. So then the pulse follow-up assessment with the same readers. So we're looking, how have I really developed in that area I focused on? So it was something we developed with a consultant for an in-house 360 tool.
So those are done. Thank you so much, Michelle. So those are done in 360 as well. So each time you're probing for those same competencies, they're getting all of the feedback from the same raters, or in theory from the same rater groups.
We're getting it from the same rater group, but the pulse survey does not assess all the competencies. We would select 1 or 2 that the coachee wants to follow up on.
Got it.
Why keep asking if I'm already doing a great job with strategic planning?
Great, thank you.
So Michelle, this might be coming in your next session. Marguerite has asked what's next for our program. Talked about the pulse assessment. Laura Walden has asked, was it difficult to get leadership buy-in to launch this program?
That's a great question. I started with the organization about 16 months ago. So I'm not certain about that aspect. Melissa, do you recall?
I do recall. So we had she was the vice president at the time. She, and this was back in the earlier 2000s. She started our organizational effectiveness team. She started that function for our organization in the early 2000s. And as a part of that, Joan was, some of you may know her, Joan Evans. She was a certified coach herself and felt very strongly about coaching in our organization. And so she worked with the executive CEO and COO at the time and really had them consider what a coaching program could look like. So it was, I would describe it as a very small grassroots effort that has grown over the years. The story of success has led to the commitment of training cohorts worth of people and now having 70 some coaches. So it wasn't, we went from 0 to 75. It was, we started with 1, we built to 2, and it really did build over probably 15 or 20 years.
Michelle, this is Tara with Grilling Clinic. You mentioned something in your presentation about the power of coaching, like I think it was a patient technician. Can you say more about your coaching efforts outside of formal leaders in your organization?
Can you tell me a little bit more about your question?
Are you, so I'll start back. Are you coaching outside of leaders? Like, do you coach people who are non-leaders at Cone?
Oh, I see. Yeah. So what we're doing now, because really my vision is that we would be doing that. And so what we're doing right now is on a case-by-case basis. So if I have a call about, here's my admin assistant, she's on fire, I really want her to have coaching, and I have bandwidth in my coaching cadre, absolutely, we're going to provide it. We just don't market it that it's out there for everyone because we're not quite ready for that. And there's some questions we haven't answered about how do you provide time for that if you're hourly.
Okay, great. Good to hear. Thank you.
Mhm.
Michelle, there's no other questions in the chat.
Okay, thank you. All right, well, let me talk for a few minutes about some of the future possibilities that you might envision with internal coaching. And then we'll have some great discussion. I'd love to hear what you're doing in your facilities as well. So I broke this down into 3 categories. So first is the revenue saving possibilities. So you can really experience a significant reduction in external consultants when you have internal professional coaches. You know, coaches know how to take a step back and look at things from that broad perspective and be an open thought partner, which is really what a consultant is all about. A significant reduction in external coaching contracts. External coaching in our area is anywhere from $200 to $1,200 per hour for coaching. So you 6 sessions, $6,000, we can save a lot of money very quickly by utilizing internal coaches. Retention and performance support, as well as burnout prevention. We're currently working to partner more with our physician burnout efforts to ensure that physicians are able to access coaching quickly and confidentially. We even have a fund that was created to support physicians that really want to go external for their coaching. So we're just making sure we have that resource. Of course, retention through succession planning, I mentioned that. And then imagine if you could target areas of concern. If you took a nursing unit that had high turnover and low patient satisfaction scores and brought in a team of coaches and supported everyone on that unit, from nurse techs to respiratory therapists to nurses to nurse leaders, provide coaching to the whole unit and really see the difference. The turnover cost alone is going to be huge for the organization, but really the powerful impact is in the patient satisfaction scores. So then there's revenue generating possibilities, ways that you can think about really affecting bringing dollars in. So as you consider, you might think about external professional development facilitated by your certified coaches. I think there's a real need for this in the community. It's a niche that we're considering, what we're looking into presently. And then another idea is to provide executive coaching for medical residents. What if we could work with these residents before they come to practice to really work on preventing burnout, resiliency skills, helping them to build that confidence to sustain while they're in practice. When I see physicians that come into coaching, they talk about, I didn't learn this stuff. I didn't know. They just haven't had time to focus on the kinds of things they get from coaching because they were learning and focusing on other things. So if we could offer that earlier. And then again, offering executive coaching for other organizations without internal coaches. This is a need. There's a lot of external coaches looking to get into our organizations, and why not provide it for one another? And then deeper than that, making a quality of difference, just really impacting the quality of the way things work. So the first one is really about the more you develop your coaches, you're developing your people. And the more fulfilled they are, the better outcomes they're going to produce. It's just a cyclical dynamic. So that's where culture and retention starts to become a recruitment strategy where people come to your organization because they know of the development opportunities and they know of the succession planning efforts. And finally, what if we could reduce emergency department visits for chronic illness due to the intervention from coaching? We could do that in two ways: by teaching physicians a coaching approach, where they lead with open-ended questions and really allow the patient to have the autonomy, where the coach serves as an appropriate thought partner, allowing the patient to own their care. So then they would be more likely to own that care and end up with less of those chronic illness visits in the ED. Along the same lines, one-on-one coaching with patients, again, to foster the ownership of their health concern. So these are just a splash of ideas about where things, some possibilities about where we could go in the future. And I would love to hear how you are currently resourcing professionally certified coaches in your organization, the impact you're seeing, and then also what are some things you're thinking of doing in the future. So I'm going to stop sharing so we can just talk, and hopefully my video won't be a problem.
Michelle, could I just ask one fast question? If an executive comes into the organization or has had a previous relationship with an executive coach, do you try to steer them to internal? Are they allowed to keep the coach they have a relationship with, and do you cover costs for that? How does that work?
They can absolutely keep their own coach. Philosophically, we don't necessarily believe that we should stick with one coach for 3 or 5 years.
Right.
So we believe that would be short term. And coaching, the cost is applied to the individual's cost center. We do have a grant where we have some dollars set aside for physicians in burnout. So we have a few sessions that we could provide in that way. But for the most part, it is applied to their cost center if it's external. We still have that come through my office so that we can work. And this is a newer thing that we're working on, to really have alignment, so that Melissa doesn't have a coach for $700 an hour and Jennifer has one for $200. We in Greensboro, we are right here where the Center for Creative Leadership has its main hub. We are inundated with coaches. So there's plenty of competition and lots of really good quality coaches. There's no reason to pay $1,000 an hour.
I love what you've shared, Michelle. It's very organized. You also did a really nice job translating it into, business applicability. And I love where you're going with the physicians, with the program as well. What I'm trying to do right now, and we're just getting this started. So this year we we have about 75 ICF track coaches internally that have been through an ICF credential course. We have a number of them getting their credentials now because this has been going on not as long as you, just since 2014. But so this year we did a course to develop equity coaches, because that's really becoming really important. And then at the end of the course, I didn't really feel like the coaches were much different. I didn't feel like the partner we picked really did what I thought that they should in this vision. And so I just personally took a certification from Fifth Domain Coaching and learned in their program how to provide identity-based coaching. And it was a game changer for me as a coach to be able to bring in all the identities that someone assigns themselves or that society assigns them. And in the class, I would just share, it was so enlightening for me to see the huge blind spot I had as a coach, because I really wasn't bringing these identities into the coaching. And so learned how to do that in that class. So I highly recommend that if you're trying, maybe you can accelerate your work in developing equity coaches. But I think that's one of the next horizons. I also agree with the physician. We just got a new leader in place for our graduate medical education program, who's really engaged with leadership development, has been through our coaching program. So I think we'll be doing some things there. So I may have the team reach out to you around that physician coaching piece. And then lastly, I think the challenge now is what we've done this year is we stopped paying for an ICF credential course, and we're on a path to mature into our own course. And so this year, instead of doing a 60-hour externally funded course that's around $5,000 a seat, we brought that internal. We took our internal coaches that are doing their best work, and they formed a team that developed this internal class, which has helped them become better coaches. So they're doing a 30-hour class, I believe. Tammy Bigelow's team is doing this. So, and then, but they've designed it from the beginning so that it can mature into an ICF credential course. So eventually we'll get back to that. But I do think in the organization, what we've learned is we've got our, coaches that want to just integrate coaching into their management practice. And then we had the ICF coaches, and we didn't have anything where someone could learn a deeper amount of coaching skills without being ICF credentialed, but more than just integrating it into their practice. So we found that gap, and that's what we've been trying to close with this program. So we'll keep this 30-hour program even when we have the 60-hour version in the future. Tammy, did you want to add anything?
No, that was wonderful. And it has been a growth opportunity for us and very well received. It's been great. Good overview, Marguerite. Thanks.
How do you match your individuals with, like, do they say, oh no, I want that ICF coach, or do you do that part? We're using the same process you are. They call, we do an intake, we give them a couple coach profiles, we give them a tool to help them select a coach. They interview the coaches, pick the one they have some chemistry with, and I think that whole conversation in the organization to constantly help people understand that when you train a coach in ICF competencies and the ICF ethics, it doesn't really matter if they're internal or external. And then there's this whole conversation in the industry around, do they need some version of experience in the realm of the client? And I don't necessarily think that's a black and white answer, where I have heard people say, oh, absolutely they do not, because they're not coaching to the issues. Well, I mean, coaching isn't, the coach does coach better if they have some degree of suspicion about what the issues are. So, I mean, I didn't start coaching, well, I did accidentally start coaching CEOs in the very beginning, but I was very nervous. And I told that CEO, I'm
a new coach. I have 100 hours of coach experience. And so if your issues are going to be about board relations, I don't think I'm the best coach for you because I don't have a lot of line of sight. But her issues were about how does she was in an East Coast health system, and she was used to kind of this East Coast style, she called it. And she wanted to be a more culturally sensitive and more connected and compassionate as a leader. And I'm like, I absolutely can help you with that. So I think it depends on the issue and the coaching and whether it's in that coach's wheelhouse. But I do think, like, I do think like if you were going to talk about leading at the helm of 100,000 person organization and all of those issues, I think it does help if you've been a coach that has some leadership experience.
Thank you. I'm noticing a question in the chat here about do physicians get reimbursed for their time, the physician coaches? And our physicians can use their admin time, the required or the percentage of their job that is allowable for admin, they can use coaching during that time. I don't know if that answers the question. And another one I see, we do bring Coach Academy International to our campus to provide the coaching. And because I'm a PCC level, I actually am going to partner with them. And so we don't have the same cost as you would normally have by, so I'll serve as one of the facilitators.
So Michelle and Melissa, this is phenomenal. And I know I've been in the chat with you, Melissa, about connecting on this because it is something we'd like to expand at Hopkins. And we've tried different approaches, worked with some externals. We have 3 internal PCC coaches. And I was very underwhelmed with these external coaches, which is interesting because there is sort of that, I want an external versus an internal. So I just appreciate the presentation and I'm looking forward to connecting further to, I think for us, a big challenge, as I said earlier, might be how do we show ROI and convince leaders that this might be something we want to look at. So thank you for the presentation.
You're welcome. I think the software, and there's a lot of different softwares out there you could leverage, but that's really going to help us, I think, to track the ROI in a different sort of way. We've had to do it manually so far. Mm-hmm. And, but we can really be more specific with our survey questions and noticing exactly, we can start to match, of course, patient experience scores. We can look at our iCompass results. There's a lot of things we can start to match up and look at performance outcomes to see how it correlates with the coaching intervention.
That's called INSAL, you said? Or what?
The one that we've selected is called INSALA, INSALA.
Thank you.
And it also has a platform for mentoring.
Okay.
So Michelle, I can't speak to
and
the
so our DEI programs, so it's a nice program that you can use for. Sorry, did I cut out?
No, that's it. You did cut out. That's okay. So Michelle is the expert on the system. I would say too, Mara, one of the things is, certainly the cost related to retention. So you spend all the time to hire good leaders and there's a communication issue or there's something going on that coaching can intervene in, and isn't it worth the time and effort and money to keep them and fix that and help them work through that versus having them seek, I know that many of you are in extremely highly competitive areas. Ours is pretty competitive. We have major academic centers to the east and the west of us. And so there's a lot of flight risk. And so I think for our organization, one of the ROIs, if you will, is retaining top talent.
Yeah, so true. And especially when we are identifying top talent high potentials as a flight risk in the talent review and succession planning process. I love that they automatically get assigned coaches in your organization.
I see a couple more questions in the chat. One's about our confidentiality agreement. We do have a very specific agreement which specifies the elements of confidentiality. And we talk about that quite a bit in our synergy groups as well. So that's a kind of an ongoing practice. And it's a solid agreement. And as far as
Actually, Michelle, I put that in there to Patty.
Oh, I'm
on
sorry.
the issue of the confidentiality and people trusting the coaches. And so like, if there's a confidentiality agreement, that's a little drop in the bucket there, as well as we just talk about the ethics with ICF and the credentials there, and that our internal coaches have the same obligation and ethics as an external coach.
Mhm.
I think just in, you know, our organization, I won't say for everybody, but I think there's a specific population, especially around our executives, about being vulnerable to somebody else who is internal, who might have what I'm going to call multiple job roles, meaning like they coach and they're HR, or they're a coach and another executive, or they're a coach and ... And so very often they request external. And so, you know, I think we're in a better spot today if we were to start an internal program than we were probably 5 or 7 years ago. But certainly it doesn't sound like Michelle or Marguerite that in that vein, or Melissa, that we're exactly where you guys would be either.
Well, I personally coach 8 leaders in our organization at the CXO level, and they're comfortable.
Patty, I don't think, you know, we experienced that similarly to you. I would say, and Michelle can jump in and correct me if I'm wrong, that at the very top level of the organization, there is some external coaching for that very reason, right? Like, so I'm the executive of culture, and nobody's going to come to me for coaching from that level of the organization because they're like, oh, and so, and we would all sign the confidentiality agreement and it would be completely confidential, but that feeling, right? That feeling. So I would say that exists to a certain degree. And I think Michelle has done a beautiful job of shoring up some of the loose ends that may have existed in our coaching department and really putting it out there as a professional coaching department. And so really how it's been packaged and marketed is very different than what we would have talked about in the past. So I think that tide is changing for us as well.
Thank you, Melissa. I think so too. We have a question about how we're tracking coaching's impact on retention. And so what we do is we send out a survey twice a year to participants in the program, so that we hope to hit them at least once or twice in their 6-month engagement. And we ask specific questions about their intention to remain at the organization. What we will be able to do with Insala, it looks like I've frozen.
You came back for a second.
Oh, okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. With Insala, we're going to be able to track a lot more intentionally. And so as they work with other organizations, they've got some guidance for us around some key markers to look at. But I've also been talking with our data analytics folks to look at where can we start pulling some data to make sure that everything's lining up. It's really hard to prove retention. In similar size organization, this is Rachel Wilson. It's hard to understand how people outside an OD type department are allowed to have this as part of their job. They're volunteers. So they're passionate, they're screened before they come in. And so not everyone who wants to be a coach gets to be a coach. And then they have to, once they go through this program, they're really volunteering that time. So it's just their passion.
Beyond their normal job responsibilities, beyond 40, whatever, 50 hours.
So Rachel, it's more of an organizational commitment to the philosophy of coaching. And with that organizational commitment, it allows this cohort model, and the cohorts that are approved, it's assumed that, yes, we want them to be active coaches.
Do you do any kind of quality check, or I guess they do sample sessions, but I mean, it's not something I think everybody is wired to do. So I'd be curious
I
about.
agree. I agree. And that's one of the things I'm hoping to continue to develop in my leadership of the program, is being able to assess the quality of the coaching that's happening. Surveys is one way. Requiring them to attend these synergy groups, which are really in person, and I'm getting to kind of witness how they carry themselves, the kind of questions they ask. And so, even though the coaches may not know it, I know it in my head. They're kind of tier 1, 2, or 3. And so when somebody's coming in looking for coaching, if they're like, I just need to talk about how to be more assertive, well, that may be more of my level 1 coach. But someone's talking about something more complex, I'm gonna maybe choose Melissa. Like, I'm gonna choose someone who I know their skill set. So those who come more often to synergy groups get more coachees.
This is Tammy from Intermountain. I will say this is kind of our model too, the volunteer model. We do a lot up front to vet who's coming into the program, but it's been fascinating to see the various experiences from individuals outside of our organizational development department, what they bring to that coaching encounter and how that moves this really through the culture of our organization much quicker than we've experienced in the past.
Melanie, do we punt it back to you or to Patty, or I see we're at time really.
Yes, I think we are at time. Patty, any closing thoughts?
Just thank you very much for not only sharing the great work that you guys are doing, but helping to inspire great conversation and hopefully great thoughts for all of us on either something we can learn or be doing differently in our own organizations. So thank you very much. Great.
Thank you. It's great to connect with all of you.
Thank you.
And if
all.
I can add one more thing, just wishing everybody a very happy Thanksgiving. Since I know many of you will see each other next week in person, but I know a lot of the organizations are not able to attend. So I just want to wish everybody the start to a really wonderful holiday season.
Thanks, Patty.
Thanks, you too.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Wonderful.
Everybody,
Thank
thank you.
you. Great presentation.
Yeah,
Thank you.
really good. Thank you.
Hey, Melissa, fast question. Will we be able to get access to the recording?
As long
Melanie,
as they approve. Are you approving
I mean,
the release of it?
yeah.
Michelle,
Oh,
you,
yes.
Okay, okay. I always ask after if I can release the recording. So as long as you're okay with it, I'll put it on our member portal.
Thank you. And I hope to connect with you next week.
all right, Maura, it'll be nice to
Thank-
meet you. Thank you.
Bye-bye.